Welcome to an LTTV Special with, I would say, the most interesting man at Leicester Tigers. He is smiling. You can't see him yet, but I think he's enjoyed that title. His official title is Club Historian and known to many. But if you don't know him, this is Stuart Farmer. So Stuart, first and foremost, welcome.
Great. Thanks very much. Great to be here.
How are you?
I'm absolutely fine.
Obviously, Stuart, your life revolves around rugby union and stats. I'm not going to lie. So you will have had a very, very boring couple of months, I imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. Nothing to do whatsoever. No rugby being played, but the history is all there. So I've been actually busy beavering away, researching the past.
So what do you do? You go and check if you're actually right, what you wrote previously.
No. It's holes, if you like, in the database. So what I've been researching lately, with a Tigers perspective, is I've been researching all the opposing teams to have played against the Tigers, in terms of putting them into the database. So we've got the last 50 years now. So that's pretty good. So we can do some, who's been the best performers against Leicester over the years, those kinds of things.
All right, well, we don't want to talk too much about them. Let's be real.
No.
Look, Stuart, obviously there is a reason for there's a couple of reasons for having you on this week. One of them, a couple of them and we'll keep one till the very end, which is exciting. But the first and foremost one is obviously we celebrated a birthday this week, if I'm correct. Can you tell me a little bit, one, how old is Leicester Tigers this week?
Yeah, it's 140 years in a few days. So it was actually on the 3rd of August, 1880. I wasn't around then, honestly.
No,
but,
no. Dan Cole was.
Yeah.
That's about it. But what I'm interested in, Stuart, because I wanted to ask you was, you weren't around, but you know plenty about it. So can you tell me, and I'm going to ask it in a very simple way, how exactly because it was the Leicester Football Club, come to be on that date?
Okay. Really, you need to sort of put your watch back a little bit before that and look at rugby being played, or we should say football being played in the city of Leicester. So 1869, 11 years before Tigers were formed, Leicester St Margaret's, who were a church-based organisation, played both rugby and football in the city. I find it interesting. I don't know who they played against because they were the only team I can find formed in 1869. So they must have played between themselves. But either way, there were a few clubs in and around the city at that particular time. 3 of them, very prominent ones, called Leicester Alert, who were formed in 1876, Leicester Amateur, who were formed in 1871, and the Leicester Athletic Society, who was formed in 1870. In actual fact, those latter 3, the Alert, the Amateur and the Athletic Society, decided that not one of them was a representative club for the city of Leicester. So they said, what we needed to do is expand our horizons as a city so we could play other cities and other clubs in other towns. So they decided between the 3 of them to merge the 3 clubs and form the Leicester Football Club, which we now know as the Tigers. And that was at the George Hotel on the 3rd of August in 1880. So that's where this journey began for this amazing club that we're all involved with. And
Can I ask you, there was a name they adopted at the time, obviously not Tigers. Am I right in saying it was the Death or Glory Boys?
That's a sort of nickname.
Right,
that was in the local press a couple of times.
Okay.
I really haven't been to found a great deal of substance as to why it was that. It sounds very grandiose. It does sound as if they were a bit near the edge, I think, in the way they played in terms of those words. But I can't really find any evidence for backing up why they were called that. Certainly in the original season in 1880, when they wore black as their team kicked, they might have looked a little bit sinister, maybe. Perhaps that was part of it, with the death part of it. I don't know. That's part of the great part of it. We actually don't know. Yeah. And the name of the name of Tigers themselves, we're actually not sure about that either, which also adds to the little spectre and a little bit of intrigue. In terms of, it could be something to do with Leicester Tigers and their connection with the Leicestershire Regiment in the very famous nickname for the Tigers for their time they spent in India. And we had loads of local connections with the regiment, still do to this day. Or it could be, according to the press, this, I probably should say, hideous coloured shirt they wore in the 1885 season, which was, we're told, of course, no colour photographs, brimstone and treacle stripes. Which
I know the one you're referring to.
Yeah, which translates to sort of dark brown and gold stripes. And the local press then started to refer to Tigers as playing, the Tigers' stripes were playing well.
This one. Is this the one?
There you go.
That's the one.
That's the one. The second one in. Yeah.
So obviously, Stuart, it brings up a good point because, as you say, Tigers is what we're most well known as, let's be honest. But probably second to that is the fact that we're red, white and green. Now, I don't want to start any arguments. I hope I've said red, white and green in the right order because I know that's a very big sticking point for people. As I sit here in a rainbow hood.
Technically, it's scarlet.
Right. Well, there you go. I've already got it wrong. So
technically,
I told you.
But anyway, go on, carry on.
But so at the time, obviously black, and then as you say, Tigers has its own history, and whether or not we know the full story. When did and why did red, white, and green arrive?
Well, again, the why is an interesting one because we're not entirely sure. We have some minute books from the time, but again, we're looking at the area 1890, around that sort of the first 10 years or so. And if you look at them, it seems to be on economic basis in terms of, a football kit. You couldn't just go down to your local supermarket and buy 15 shirts for the season. You had to have the things manufactured, and there was no real skill for doing those kinds of things. They were all made out of cotton. Must have been horrendous when it was muddy and rainy. It must have been very heavy and very cold, especially when no changing facilities at any of the grounds. You used to have to go over the road to the pub to change. No showers. It's
gosh, these blokes don't know what they've got, do they? Gosh.
Absolutely spoon-fed these days. They really are. But either way, I think it was on economic terms. In terms, somebody came up with a solution. I'll tell you what, I can get you some cheap scarlet, green, and white jerseys, cheaper than the ones you're using now. Let's adopt that. And the minute books just simply say the colours, the official colours of the club, were changed to scarlet, green, and white. I haven't got the minute book in front of me, but I've got the precise date, I just can't remember it.
Yeah.
But it was around the 1890 mark. And it doesn't really give a reason why. But either way, I understand the Leicestershire Regiment's colours, the scarlet, green and white, are quite prominent in there. So again, it seems to sort of all point back to those kinds of areas. But again, I think part of the fascination is I still haven't found out. Not sure I ever will. I've done a lot of reading. I've read all the sources I possibly can. I wish someone could invent a time machine so I could actually go back and ask the guys. But at the moment, it's just conjecture. So it's part of the fun, I guess.
So in about 140 years, someone is going to be doing, to be blunt, both your and my job. And Leicester Tigers will be here. There's no doubts about that. In 140 years, bring it on. But someone is obviously going to find a minute book or maybe an online version, and they're going to wonder what this year's change kit is. So I'm going to ask you what you think of this year's, what would be known as an away kit or change kit, because that's certainly a new piece of Tigers history this year, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, every time a new sort of kit comes along, it is. The scarlet, green and white, obviously we've got the variation for the first team shirt, and we're just playing about with those stripes and the colours, and which is great. It's just, it invigorates the club. It gives a new sense of modernising in the right way, I think. But yeah, I think the change kit is striking. There's no two ways about it. We've had some pretty dull ones, shall I say, over the years. We've had some bright ones over the years.
Yes.
But this, we've not had something like this before. So yeah, I should be quite looking forward to seeing them turn out in that kind of shirt. I don't recall them wearing sort of that shade before.
No.
So
no.
I think it'll be really, really good.
So, Stuart, what I'm interested in is not necessarily Tigers history, but also your own. So, exactly how does someone end up as a club historian?
I guess you could say being a passionate fan helps.
Yeah.
And certainly when I was growing up, I actually was born over the boardroom in Warwickshire, which is criminal, really. But
right, I'll
my
cut
father
that out, don't worry.
my father redeemed himself because he's a Leicester man through and through, was a Leicester man through and through, and he did a really good job with us four boys. We had four boys of educating us into the sporting prowess of the city of Leicester. So all four of us are avid Leicester City, Leicester Tigers, Leicestershire County Cricket Club people. We've gone our different ways. I'm the only one that's sort of specialised in the rugby. The other guys are really, really into their soccer.
Yes.
But that's fine. So I used to play rugby at school pretty badly. I got diagnosed with a medical condition, which actually at the end said I wasn't supposed to play anymore. Oh. So I had to retire in my very early 20s anyway. So I had to find something else to do. So I used to go to the games on a Saturday as a frustrated spectator. And fortunately, my local team happens to be Leicester. And they're my team anyway. And I'd go and watch the games. It all started as a fan. I wondered if anybody had done any history work, anybody had done any statistical work into the history of the club. I wrote to John Allen, who was the on-sec at the time. John wrote back to me and said, there was a centenary book published in 1980, which I managed to get my hands on. And he said, we haven't really done any statistical research. So that was the catalyst for me to actually start logging all this back data going back to 1880. And that's effectively what I did. Just spent lots and lots of hours in dusty old libraries, as you used to do the research before the internet.
Yes.
Taking all this information, putting it into this new tool that was invented at that particular time, which was the home PC. We didn't all have laptops and all this kind of stuff. So I was sort of ahead of the game. So the timing was right for what I did. The club embraced it. What came out of that was a book called The Tiger's Tale, 1993, when that was published on November the 1st, 1993. And I haven't looked back since, basically. The club have put their faith in me ever since then. And the role has sort of grown into fully fledged historian, I suppose. But it never really stops. That's part of the excitement for me. It's a very fast moving consumer good, really. The rugby side of things. All right, we've had 5 months of somewhat cessation for the COVID situation, but generally speaking, no, it's not. It's ever ongoing, and your next game changes history. It always does. It just adds to the tapestry, and that's part of the fascination for me.
Because while I'm obviously selfishly wanting just to talk about Tigers, because I do have this sitting on my knee, I'm not going to lie, the Bible, which, by the way, you've got about 6 years to fill out here, Stuart. So you're going to have to...
Yeah. I know, tell me about it. There was quite a few years between the original Tigers Tale, 93, and when that came out in 2014. So
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
There's a couple of things where I think, oh, he's not playing anymore. Why does it say that? Anyway, it's not just Leicester Tigers, because I don't like saying the word statistician. I hate saying
I can understand why I can't spell it either. So
no, I can't say it, spell it, do anything. But that is also, while you're a historian, you're also the stats man for World Rugby, if I'm correct.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or the world of rugby.
The world of rugby.
Yes,
is a better way of putting
sorry.
it. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the test archive that I've built up over the years, the test match archive is freely available on ESPNscrum.com, and people can inquire how many caps has anybody got. And that's unfortunately, that's the basis of my database that drives that little beast forward. And I do work for the governing bodies as well. So I do work for Premiership Rugby, and I do work for the Pro 14. And if you happen to go to South Africa and watch any of their rugby, then the graphics that pop up on the screen on Mnet, they're all my graphics to do with the career records in the Currie Cup or Super Rugby or whatever. So, yeah, what I started off as a little pet project, if you like, in the early 1990s with Leicester Tigers building. That was the first ever database. So it was pioneering for me in that respect. First ever rugby database. I'd had a dabble with cricket prior to that. I love Formula One too, so I'd had a bit of a dabble with that. But the Tigers one was the one that took off, and I just happened to adapt that then into that. And who was to know that, 20, 30 years later, further down the road, I've managed to sort of turn that very impromptu ad hoc hobby into a fascinating job and one that I never tire of. But yeah, you're right. It's the world of rugby now, and somebody goes and joins the Tigers. We've got a lot of new guys come on board this year, but I'll know about those fellas. I'll have all their career history because we've built them up since they started playing. So that's the fascination of it. Once they appear on the Farmer radar, which is very early in their careers, usually when they're part of the academies, if they're English, and the 18s, the under 18 academies, they'll start to appear on the database, and hopefully they'll all have long and fruitful careers and retire at the other end, having played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games, all logged by me and my team.
So that intrigues me, because I'm very interested to know what a day is like for you, because you just tell me, because I'm going to go off and I'm going to create some Hollywood story in my head here. But you go, you tell me what a day is for you, because I've probably got a different idea.
I'll have to talk about a typical day pre-COVID, I think, because it's been a bit different over the last.
Ignore the last few months. Ignore them.
But generally speaking, weekends are real busy. So Friday starts Friday evening, really. Saturday and Sunday, it's constant in terms of rugby is being played throughout the world. And I've got a network of people that help me log all those matches throughout the world. Great guys that have been working with me for years and years and years. All that information goes into the database. Now, years ago, I used to do a hell of a lot of data entry myself from games. I don't tend to do so much of that. What my role is these days is quality control. So, for instance, every Premiership game, Super Rugby game, all those kinds of... The fourth official on the sidelines are filling in information about who came on for who and when the scoring took place. So we'll assemble all that information. We'll get that from the touchline. We will then 100% error check that against what's been data entered. So we will check whether, did that guy score that try? Did that guy come on for... How the hell did he score? He was supposedly in the sin bin.
So you don't watch every game. Do you watch every game on TV?
No. I watch fewer games these days than I used to watch, just because when there's so many games going on all at the same time. Saturday afternoon, we're covering rugby from early in the morning at Super Rugby, perhaps in Australia, New Zealand, whatever, through to pretty late at night when the French finally stop playing in the top 14. So you just can't embroil yourself and watch all the games too. I watch as many as I can, but really I have to prioritise, and those priorities tend to be, are the Tigers playing this weekend? When are they playing? And I'll make sure I've got my 2 hours to one side to watch Tigers. If they don't happen to be on TV, then it's Radio Leicester for me and the dulcet tones of Blethyn. And the crowd.
The question there, Stuart, is, do you actually, because you said it all began because you're a fan, do you actually enjoy rugby anymore? Do you sit back and relax and enjoy it? I know that sounds awful, but I'm genuinely interested. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. It's evolved, shall I say. Whereas, you're absolutely right. 30 years ago, I was a screaming fan, very, very passionate about it. I haven't lost any of the passion, but the way I deal with it now is different. So I think the reason for that is that I spent so many years as the Tigers media officer before Gary Sherrard. I was the media officer when that role was sort of first invented when the club became professional in 1995. And I did that role for 7 or 8 years in the golden years when we won the 4 successive titles and the 2 European Cups. And because you know this, when you sit in the press box, there's a protocol. So even though the Tigers might have scored the best try you can ever imagine, you can't really stand out of your seat and scream and shout and holler. It's not the protocol in the press box. So
No.
it's
I'm
sort
frequently in trouble for breaking that protocol. It's
there you
worth
go.
pointing
Well,
that
I
out.
didn't. I was a real boring so-and-so. So I would actually
Yeah.
abide by those rules. And it's tempered me a little bit. So I actually
Yeah.
quite like now the fact that I don't sit in the press box anymore. I have my season ticket over the way in the Caterpillar stand, or sorry,
The
that's
Holland
wrong.
and Barrett
What's
stand.
it called?
The Holland and
Barrett
Barrett
stand these days. And I can actually scream and shout now, and I can have an opinion about the referee or anything pertaining to the game, because people in the journalists are not looking for a soundbite. So it's kind of nice. So my role is it's completely changed. It's evolved. My passion as a fan's still there, and Leicester are my team, and I want them to succeed more than any other team in the world, and that's never going to lose that.
I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions here because I'm quite interested.
Sure.
And then I'm going to put you under the microscope and actually see whether or not it's all in the computer or you've got any in that head of yours. So
no, it's all in the computer, mate. I'll just let you down straight away. But go on, carry on.
My question is, who's the most interesting player statistically that's ever played for Tigers?
Whoa!
I told you I'd get you. I told you.
Yeah.
I tried to warn you.
It is. There are so many. We've got well over 2,000 guys have pulled on that first team shirt. And now I haven't seen a hell of a lot of those, but I have seen probably approaching 1,000 of those guys, maybe, not entirely sure. So it's a tough call to ask that question, but I suppose Dusty Hare really, just because being the kicker as he was, and wrongly is renowned as. Yeah. But, just because he could score in so many different ways.
Yes.
And these are in the days before you could log how many tackles people made or how many metres they ran with the ball in them that they can today.
Dusty didn't make many tackles, mate. We can leave that out. You know that. But come on. You have that on record. I can give you that now. 0.
No. I think you're wrong there. Les Cousins used to let the guys through, and Dusty with the last line.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
But either way, I think Dusty, just because he's a bit of a folk hero, not just with Leicester, but with England.
Yeah.
He was such a good cricketer too, and he's got his first-class cricket record for Nottinghamshire. He even scored a first-class century. I mean, wow. Not just good at one sport, he could do anything. And so, for me, Dusty, he ticks all those boxes. I mean, I suppose if you look at the forwards, maybe Jono, in terms of statistically, the fact that, he retired on exactly 500 first-class matches, when that last game.
Wow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it was the defeat to Wasps. But, to play 500 games.
He did all right. He did all right in his 500, all right. Like, he's not whinging, is he, about his record?
Absolutely not. Most of those games were in the professional era too, which is undoubtedly tougher than it was in a different way. It's more physical. I think the amateur era is more exacting on you mentally because you're a hard job. You could only train Tuesday and Thursday evenings basically, and then turn up on a Saturday and play the game.
It was a hobby, wasn't it?
That must have been really tough.
It was a hobby.
Yeah, that must have been tough. So, statistically, that's just 2 guys. There's hundreds of them. They all have an interesting story.
You think about those 2 blokes, legends, world record holder and a giant of the game in both size and stature, physically.
Sure.
But 2 blokes that happen to also play for Leicester Tigers.
Yeah.
It shows you something, doesn't it?
I think it absolutely does. And I think Jono, being a local boy, the Market Harborough connection, all that sort of stuff. So, his local team, he will have played for Tigers, even if he hadn't been such a good player, he would have still turned out for Tigers. He was a big fan. He used to turn up on the terraces, as most of the guys, lots and lots and lots of the guys, the Youngs boys, they'd be on the terrace before they ever pulled on his shirt. Lewis Moody was the same. Yeah. All the guys, Matt Smith. There's a lot of guys that would have been fans initially and then were good enough to actually make it and make that first team shirt. So that's something that's interesting. Dusty's slightly different because he's a little bit further out of the catchment area, but at that time, from Newark, not that far away, but a Nottingham man, but he saw the light and he came over to the Tigers, and he's renowned as being a Tigers man. and rightly so. And interesting thing on that world record, I'm still working on that world record because I don't believe the figure that's in the Guinness Book of Records at all.
Really?
Because no, not at all. It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. It's way low.
I was going to say. So what's the figure in the book?
Oh, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but he's 400, 500 shy on that book of what he's actually getting.
Because it's like 7191 or something, isn't it? The record.
Possibly.
Do you reckon that's low?
Yeah. Because if you look at the breakdown of the figures, which you can get sort of by deducing things. If you go into Wikipedia, which is a terrible source of reference, I'm sorry, but it is for rugby. It doesn't really explain on that, but you can deduce where the figures come from. In actual fact, it's all what Leicester's figure is accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wonder why that is, because I've actually done the research on the Leicester bit. The other bits, the England bit, okay, we're accurate on that too. But it's the Nottingham thing. It says that he scored, if you work the points out that the Guinness Book of Records, he scored exactly 1,800 points for Nottingham. Well, he didn't, because John Drapkin, who's their historian, I've been in touch with John, and he's 1,923 or something for Nottingham alone. So we're wrong on that to start with. Everybody seems to forget he played for Newark. He played for Newark in first-class rugby. Nobody had got those figures. But I've managed to rope in Rob Wildman, who's the journalist that you'll read in the Telegraph quite often, but he's based in Newark, and Newark's his club. And he's done a lot of work in the libraries in Newark, digging up Dusty's statistics from the early 70s. So we're going to eventually get a definitive figure for Dusty. We're close, but we're not just there yet. So it's just interesting. I just find it really interesting. I hate wrong information. Always have had, and that's wrong. And it's wrong on the right side because he's going to have a lot more points. And no one's ever going to surpass that.
No chance.
There's just they don't play enough rugby these days to actually get anywhere near Dusty's record. He's just a legend of the game.
So my next question then is, which position on the field is the most, I guess, unexciting for a historian or a statsman? Which position gives you nothing, really? You just think, what are you doing out there?
Well, props, really, because it's the
Bang, cha-ching, perfect answer.
I can say that because I haven't got Darren Garforth breathing down my throat or Dan Cole or anybody like that. They're a long way away from me just now. And I can get in my car. I could still probably run a bit quicker than those guys.
You'd be fine.
But either way, only for the purposes that their skill is in the unseen, I think, a lot of the time. In the modern game, the prop's a lot more involved than he was, even in the 80s.
Yeah.
He's a lot more involved in terms of he has to be mobile around the field. He has to put the tackles in. But they don't score many tries. And if you're not keeping performance statistics, in rugby, the only stats you can keep are who scores all the tries and who scores all the points. And props generally tend not to score too many of them.
No. Garth was all right.
The reason.
Garth scored quite a few, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure. They all did, in that. But in comparison to how many John Duggan had run in on the wing, or Bob Barker, or all these guys, it pales into insignificance. So the record keeping for props is a little easier, or it used to be, in terms of the tries they score. It's more, how long did they go without scoring a try than how many did they? But it's not decrying this. Rugby's a game for all shapes and all sizes. Your team's not going to win if you've got too many weak links in there. So you have to be from A to O, as it used to be in the old days.
Yes.
From 1 to 15 these days, you've got to have the strongest team. So everybody's got to pull their weight. And the first name on the team sheet is nearly always your tight head, number 3.
Coley. Just don't tell him.
Unless that's stable, you've got a stable scrum, you're not going anywhere. So to answer your question, from a statistical point of view, it's the props.
Yeah.
But in actual fact, that's not the truth. Really.
So you've confirmed that they're the most boring, which is what we needed. All right. So here's my test for you, Stuart.
Yeah.
And this is your figures. So again, we are a couple of years behind, but I think we're all right. This
Go
book
on.
reckons only one player has played for Tigers with a surname starting with Z or Z. Who is it?
Danny Zoltzman.
Oh, you got that
Is that
one
right?
easily. Yeah. Gosh, I should have gone harder. Who's the first ever Tigers player, Stuart? Who has number 1 next to their name?
Wow.
Player number 1.
So it would be the very first game, obviously. Or you're on about letter A, or you're on about the very first game, the first player?
Yeah, who would be counted as player 1 in Tigers history?
Right. Well, obviously, game number 1 against Moseley in October 1880.
Yeah.
You would then, because all 15 entered the field at the same time, technically it's a dead heat for all 15 players.
So they're all number 1.
But alphabetically, it would have to be, I guess, based on that. So, good question. A, B, C. Collier? John Collier?
Do you know what? I asked you the question, and I really should have got the answer prepared, shouldn't I? Like I've gone a bit far here. I reckon it might be. Oh, I don't know here. Is it not Henry Biggs?
Go on then. I'll accept that your alphabet's better than mine.
Someone can tell me I'm wrong, and if I am, please let me know. But look, Stuart, I don't want to drag all these stats out of you, because the real reason you're here, and while we've had a chat and people hopefully will enjoy it, the real reason you're here, Stuart, is obviously the podcast has come back this week ahead of the return next week. That man himself, the man you named boring, Dan Cole, was the first guest. You didn't name him boring, but I will. He was the first guest this week. But Stuart, you are going to join me weekly from now on, starting next week ahead of Exeter. And you're going to provide me with something not only ahead of the game, looking back on the week gone, but also you're gonna provide something weekly, aren't you, for fans to, I guess, divulge and learn a little bit more, and hopefully we can sell a few more copies of this so that you can go and finish the next 6-7 years.
Yeah, that it sounds like a great idea. I might even set a few little quiz questions to get the ether buzzing out there. You never know. It's always a great discussion point.
Do it. Stuart, I appreciate your time. I know that the last couple of months for you have been, well, as you say, you've found an interest in them, but I'm sure you are among the thousands looking forward to seeing the Premiership back next week.
Definitely. Can't wait. We could have had an easier introduction than a game against Exeter down there.
Bring it on.
But either way, we've got every confidence. I think the Messiah, Mr. Borthwick, hopefully is going to deliver the goods. That's what I'm hoping.
The Dark Lord.
He's got a great pedigree. I think he's got a great camaraderie with the boys. I like what he's brought in into the environment in all kinds of schemes. Everyone you speak to only says positive things about him. I just like that. And we just need to get back close to where we were. I don't think we'll ever get to that zenith that we were at before, because it was so far ahead of anybody else. However, if we can just get up there and get really, really competitive again, I'm just really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be terrific.
Well, Stuart, I'm looking forward to weekly chats with you, because this has been another fascinating one, and I appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure. Looking forward to it, my friend.
Thank you, Stuart. See you soon.
See you then.